There's a detail buried inside the Weather Prediction Center's short-range forecast discussion published on Sunday, April 19th, 2026, that most people reading the storm headlines this week have not seen, and it is the detail that changes the entire risk profile of what is about to happen to the American heartland from Monday through Friday. The WPC stated it plainly in between sections about the Pacific Trough's arrival and the severe weather threat building for Thursday and Friday, without any dramatic language, as if it were a routine transitional note. Dry and gusty conditions will lead to a fire weather threat over portions of the southern high plains over the next couple of days. 2 sentences, 14 words. And they represent the dangerous turn this storm just took, because those 14 words are describing a landscape that, as of April 14th, 2026, had already experienced more than one. 7 million acres of active wildfire, more than double the 10-year average for the same period, according to the National Interagency Fire Center. They are describing a southern plains where the Storm Prediction Center has already been flagging critical fire weather conditions. They are describing a Texas and Oklahoma where the combined capacity of Lake Corpus Christi and Choke Canyon Reservoir has fallen to 9%, the lowest level ever recorded for those 2 facilities, and where 99% of Oklahoma and 89% of Texas are in formal drought designation. And they are describing the thing that makes the storm arriving this week genuinely, specifically, documentably more dangerous than the storms that just tore through Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and Missouri last week. The dangerous turn is not the thunderstorms and tornadoes arriving Thursday and Friday. The dangerous turn is what arrives first, before the rain, before the severe weather, before any of the benefits. The storm is sending its fire weather arm into the southern plains first, 60+ mile-per-hour wind gusts, single-digit relative humidity, temperatures running 20 to 30 degrees above average, into a landscape that is already burning, has been burning since February, and is running at the most severe first-quarter drought severity and coverage index level recorded since the year 2000. The storm took a dangerous turn because the same atmospheric system that delivers potential flooding relief to one half of the country is simultaneously delivering the exact conditions needed for historic, uncontrollable wildfire to the other half. And those two halves are adjacent, separated by geography measured in hundreds of miles, connected by a single surface low-pressure system that is, right now, ejecting out of the Great Basin toward a central United States that has already spent 4 months being pushed past every threshold the forecasting record recognized as extreme. Start with the fire side, because it is the part of this week's story that the severe weather coverage is not leading with, and it is the part with the most immediate, most measurable, most overlooked danger. The National Interagency Fire Center reported through April 14th that over 19,000 fires had burned more than one. 7 million acres across the United States in 2026. 19,000 fires. The most fire ignitions at that point in the calendar year since at least 2016. More than 127% above the 10-year average for acres burned. In January, February, and March alone, the months when wildfire is supposed to be a minor concern, when dormant grasses and wet soils are supposed to provide the landscape with its annual recovery window, the fire season of 2026 delivered the Ranger Road. Fire in Oklahoma and Kansas in February, 283,000 acres driven by 65 mile-per-hour winds. The Morill Fire in Nebraska in March, 643,000 acres in under a week. The largest wildfire in Nebraska state history, burning 65 miles in 6 hours on a single afternoon. Fires simultaneously burning in Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Florida, and Georgia before April had even finished its second week. The NIFC's wildfire forecast for the April through July period flagged above normal fire potential for the southern plains and much of the southeast continuing through spring. And the Drought Severity and Coverage Index, which combines precipitation data, soil moisture readings, snowpack measurements, water evaporation rates, and other quantitative benchmarks into a single composite measure of how dry the landscape has hit its most severe first quarter value in at least 26 years of measurement. More severe than the 2012 drought year that produced the previous Nebraska wildfire record Morill broke in March. More severe than the drought years of 2002, 2006, and 2011 that defined the modern frame of reference for catastrophic U.S. fire seasons. More severe than any equivalent first quarter reading since the year 2000. And the storm arriving this week, before it brings a single drop of rain to any of that parched landscape, is bringing the fire-enabling southwest winds that pushed the Morill Fire 65 miles in 6 hours. The SPC's fire weather arm, the division that tracks the same atmospheric setups as the severe weather division, but specifically monitors for the combination of low humidity, high winds, and critically dry fuels that turns a single spark into an uncontrollable inferno, has already outlined critical fire weather risk for the southern high plains, coinciding with the storm's leading edge arrival on Monday and Tuesday. That is this week, right now, before the thunderstorms form, before the Cape values approach 3,500 joules per kilogram, before the mid-60-degree dew points return to the plains. The fire weather arm of this storm is already here, and it is landing on a landscape where the U.S. Forest Service's Deputy Chief of Fire and Aviation, Sarah Fisher, said publicly just weeks ago, reflecting on 2026's extraordinary early season. What we've seen already this year with the weather and some of the fire conditions have shown rapid escalation in fire behavior, rapid fire growth, rapid escalation, before the season's peak month arrived, and the peak month is now. Now look at what the storm did to the northern tier of the country last week, what it left behind, because the flood-damaged landscape that the storm's cold front is arriving on top of in the Great Lakes and upper Midwest is the second dimension of this week's dangerous turn. Governor Tony Evers of Wisconsin signed Executive Order No. 289 on April 15th, declaring a formal state of emergency. Storms had been moving through Wisconsin since April 13th, bringing devastation that included a train buried completely underwater in Janesville when floodwaters washed out the rail bed beneath a grain train near North Washington Street, 3 locomotives derailed simultaneously, the conductor physically extracted and hospitalized, 724 calls to 911 in Rock County between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. On April 17th alone, a 392% surge above a typical Friday evening's call volume, a woman and her child rescued from a vehicle swallowed by floodwater in Milwaukee, while the county sheriff warned people not to drive. The Wisconsin River at Portage cresting nearly 2 feet above flood stage, while state DNR officials monitored levee integrity. The Wolf River still in major flood as of the NWS Green Bay Hazard Outlook issued Sunday, April 19th, with major flooding forecast to persist on parts of the Wolf River through Tuesday, not receding by Tuesday, still at major flood stage. And the next storm system, the one carrying Thursday and Friday's severe weather threat, is loading Gulf moisture that will begin arriving by Wednesday evening into the same river basins, the same saturated soils, the same communities that spent last week managing the most severe flooding in their observational record. The Cheboygan Lock and Dam in northern Michigan came within 16 inches of structural failure on the morning of April 17th. The dam was stabilized, the crisis averted. But the Muskegon River downstream remained in major flood. 20-plus river monitoring stations across Michigan and Wisconsin hit major or record flood levels last week. The Climate Prediction Center's Hazards Outlook is flagging possible flooding for the Great Lakes region and upper Mississippi Valley through the next 2 weeks. 1 inch of additional rain across the upper Midwest right now, 1 inch, routes directly and completely into river systems that have no remaining capacity to accommodate it. And the moderate risk for heavy precipitation posted by the CPC for portions of the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and southeastern United States on April 24th and 25th is not landing on dry ground or empty riverbeds. It is landing on the same geography that is currently operating at the outer limit of its physical capacity to remain manageable. Now bring those two landscapes together. The burning southern plains on the storm's southwest side, the flooded upper Midwest on its northeast side, and understand the dangerous turn that gives this week its specific character. A typical dangerous storm has a dangerous side. It brings tornadoes to one corridor, or flooding to one river basin, or fire weather to one fire-prone region. The storm system arriving this week is bringing all three to 3 different geographic sectors simultaneously, connected by a single surface low-pressure system tracking northeast from the Great Basin through the Central Plains. The WPC's extended forecast discussion from April 19th described the architecture. A Pacific mid-upper level trough pushes across the Great Basin and Intermountain West before ejecting eastward into the northern plains mid to late week. And as the trough and its associated surface low interacts with surging Gulf moisture over the central United States, episodes of heavy rain and severe weather will become more likely Thursday and Friday. That description, trough ejecting eastward, surface low deepening, Gulf moisture surging northward, is the same description that applies to every major central U.S. outbreak. What makes this week's version dangerous in the specific sense that the word demands is the sequential loading. Monday and Tuesday, fire weather arm activates. Southern plains, wind gusts at 50 to 60 miles per hour. Relative humidity dropping to single digits in the worst affected areas. The SPC's fire weather critical risk in place. Any fire that starts in this window, any escaped burn, any downed power line sparking dry grass, any vehicle fire on a rural highway, has the same fuel load, the same wind speeds, and the same resistance to control conditions that drove the Morrill Fire's 65-mile run. Wednesday, the pause. Temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above average loading the warm sector with thermal energy that the approaching trough will convert to severe weather. 50,000 homes and businesses in Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Oklahoma that lost power during the April 17th outbreak and may still be partially without service, entering another severe weather window. Thursday and Friday. The severe weather arrives. Tornadoes, hail to potentially near softball size, damaging winds up to 90 miles per hour, flooding rainfall on saturated soils and rivers already at or above records. Behind it by Saturday. Below normal temperatures, spreading into the northern and central plains and Midwest. Temperature crash, fire weather conditions, potentially developing on the backside of the front in regions that just had flooding, as cold, dry air replaces the Gulf moisture and relative humidity plummets behind the cold front passage. The sequence is fire, load, explode, crash, each step feeding the next, none of them isolated. The dangerous turn also lives in the model uncertainty, the specific kind of uncertainty that the WPC is now on record describing as notoriously volatile. The two-solution problem that has defined this storm from the beginning is still active. The ECMIWF and ensemble systems, GEFS and EPS, are showing a large-scale trough with multiple shortwave disturbances rotating around its base, a configuration that produces a significant but distributed severe weather event. The GFS and the ECAIFs are showing a consolidated mid-level trough, a single amplified feature, which is what the SPC described in its Day 4-8 outlook as capable of producing a much more substantial severe weather event across the central and southern plains. Both of those solutions are still being run by their respective modeling systems, as of the most recent guidance. Both carry significant physical plausibility given the atmospheric state, and the WPC, in its most recent extended discussion, explicitly cautioned that solutions involving multiple shortwaves rotating within and around the parent low are notoriously volatile with continued run-to-run changes expected before solutions stabilize. That phrase, continued run-to-run changes, is meteorological language for forecasters do not yet know which version of this storm they are going to get. And the range between the two versions is not the range between minor and moderate. It is the range between a significant multi-day outbreak and something that the SPC's own language describes as much more substantial. The last time a storm in this atmospheric configuration arrived with that kind of model spread, the SPC didn't forecast a tornado threat for Kansas City, and 5 tornadoes hit that evening. The morning balloon launches that were supposed to resolve that kind of model ambiguity were delayed to noon at multiple Great Plains offices because of staffing cuts. Those offices are still running the same reduced launch schedule this week. The data gap that produced 5 unforecast tornadoes in Kansas City is still open. The accumulated weight of what 2026 has placed in the path of this storm is measurable at every scale. The drought severity and coverage index is at its worst first quarter level since 2000. Over 7 million acres have burned before the season's peak month began. 59.9% of the continental United States was in some form of drought as of March 31st. The Wolf River is still at major flood stage. The Wisconsin River at Portage is still above flood stage. The Muskegon River in Michigan is still in major flood. The Cheboygan Dam came within 5 inches of structural failure a week ago. The La Crosse NWS field office set an all-time record, issuing 26 tornado warnings in one afternoon last Friday. The SPC confirmed 46 tornadoes on April 17th alone. The season total stands at 356 confirmed tornadoes through April 17th, with the most active month still ahead. May averages 275 to 294 tornadoes. The Wells County, Indiana, EF5, with 200-mile-per-hour winds from March 10th, remains the second EF5 anywhere in the United States since 2013. The La Niña to El Niño climate transition mirrors the atmospheric setup that preceded the 1974 super outbreak and the 2011 season in which 553 people died. And the federal firefighting system is, per the Forest Service's own deputy chief, seeing rapid escalation in fire behavior and rapid fire growth under a reorganization plan that the Bonner County Daily Bee documented in April as leaving federal firefighters in a state of uncertainty and anxiety, because no one really knows what is going to happen next, what they are supposed to be doing, or who they are supposed to answer to. The storm this week takes its dangerous turn not because of what it is doing in isolation. It takes its dangerous turn because of what it is doing against this backdrop. Arriving on a fire-scarred, flood-saturated, drought-stressed, warning-compromised landscape in a week when the models are still deciding between a significant outbreak and a much more substantial one, while the morning balloon data that distinguishes between those two outcomes is not being collected at the times those models need it most. The storm took a dangerous turn the moment it began organizing in the Pacific. Every system it is about to arrive on top of made that turn more dangerous than the last.